Hi, I'm your host, Kelly Jo, and this is the Nourished Motherhood podcast, a show dedicated to bringing together the voices of motherhood and helping women connect with others and themselves through the power of sharing honest, vulnerable stories. Because every woman deserves to have a place where her voice is heard. We believe that supporting mothers is one of the healthiest things we can do for our society. There's a balance of beauty and grit to be found in every woman's story. And we're so honored you're here to listen, connect, and grow with us. Let's dive in. Today is a really special episode for me and very personal. I am gathered today with my husband, Caleb, and our incredible midwife, Mary Yanagawa from Valor Midwifery Services, to talk about our birth story, the story of bringing our son Ari into the world and what that looked like. And, it couldn't have been an experience more different than giving birth to my daughter. And it just was a great reminder that it's so important to go into birth with positive outlook and believing everything is going to go as you envision it, but knowing at the same time it's important to be yielded or surrendered to how things unfold that might be different than your ideal plan. And that is exactly what happened with us, and at every step of the road needed to surrender my own expectations for what my reality was in the present. And so it's truly, a story that's funny, thanks to my husband, and incredibly beautiful and also full of hard moments. But even though it was hard, doesn't mean that it wasn't incredibly empowering. So I'm really excited to be joined by two of my favorite people, and Mary is an incredible midwife. I can't imagine a better healthcare provider on my team, walking with me through my pregnancy, through the birth process, even through our postpartum recovery. And, she's not only been an important member of our team and village, but has also become a really great friend. So I'm excited for this conversation. There's funny moments, there's serious moments. And so it's a really special one today. So let's dive in. Hey guys, I am so excited for today's episode. We are sharing Ari's birth story. He is about 8 weeks as we are recording this. And so it's not just me. I actually have my husband Caleb here. Say hello.
Hello.
And our wonderful midwife, Mary Yanagawa.
Hello.
And I just thought I could have shared this story, but it was such an experience and such an interesting and intense birth, but so beautiful that I wanted a fuller picture of what happened. There's moments I don't remember. There's so much comedy in it because of my husband. Actually, he's like our comic relief.
Making a fool of himself.
And, Mary had to pull out all of her skills for this one, and she just shined, and I can't imagine doing it without her. So I can't imagine sharing her story without her by our side. So I'm just so thrilled today. And we also have Ari here. So he is currently asleep, but you might hear him throughout this as well. So all of this, it's unscripted. This is just off the cuff. We're all together. We're all sipping tea. Actually, we have the best tea quotes. Let's read them, guys. Go for it, babe. You read yours first.
All right. Mine is "Bring Me the Sunset in a Cup" by Emily Dickinson.
And what's yours, Mary?
Mine says, "How strange that nature does not knock, and yet it does not intrude."
Ooh. And mine is, "Beauty is not caused, it is." So I hope for this episode that in this story you can just grab a cup of tea and drink your tea alongside of us and enjoy. So let's back up. So with our daughter, we had a beautiful, what Miss Mary says is a butter birth when we describe it. And it was, it was relatively fast for our first child. I think start to finish, we were 5 or 6 hours, but it was just smooth. We had her at a birth center, and we're not going to go really into that, but it was just this really dreamy experience. I had nothing really negative to say about it. I wouldn't even describe it as hard. It was empowering and just really beautiful. And so, so I was expecting this time around, we were going to go the birth center route, same midwife. And then about, halfway through our pregnancy or so?
I think it was, you were about 12 or 14 weeks.
Okay, so not even that far. Yeah, we got news that our former midwife, who we love, was transitioning out of the birth space. And so Mary was taking on all of her clients. And so we met with Mary, and we didn't really know what was happening at first, but then we're like, oh, so Mary's going to be our midwife, and it also means we need to have a home birth because the birth center was closing down. So that was just like kind of a shock. And so I paused. I was like, I just need to think about this, right? I took, a couple?
I think you took a few weeks, and I was kind of sitting back waiting to see what you would decide and giving you space to think about it and pray about it. Trying not to, push myself on you or make you sway your decision at all. Because everybody should be able to choose who their provider is, and a midwife especially, it needs to be someone that you are connecting with.
Yes.
So I won't be everyone's midwife, and everyone should be able to find their perfect midwife. And yeah, so I was definitely thinking maybe I wasn't right for you, and that's okay. And I talked to your former midwife about it, and she was kind of in the same space where she was just thinking, we'll see what Kelly decides to do and go from there.
Yeah, and I really had wanted a home birth with Ruby, actually, our daughter, but we lived 45 minutes away from the hospital, really dangerous highway. She was almost born in a blizzard. I mean, she was born in a blizzard, and so could have been born in the car. So, I mean, we had decided, I think for us, babe, your mom had a really traumatic birth with you.
She did.
So
yes.
It was kind of like a compromise of like, okay, we're not going to do hospital, but we're not going to do a home birth. So we'll do a birth center. And it was such a great experience. So that's what we were going to do again, because it was just so great. And I think like what Mary said was, I wanted to make sure this decision wasn't being made for me. And birth and healthcare in general, I think especially for women, can be so disempowering at times and feel like decisions are being made for you. And I just really wanted to make sure that this was a decision that I was making, I was comfortable with. Also because if it didn't go how I hoped it would be, I didn't want to be resentful, being like, well, this was, I didn't really even want this, And I just didn't want any of that. So I took some time, and then I was like, you know what? We had a really long conversation, and I was like, this is it. And it's been the biggest blessing. Mary has also become a really good friend. And I can't imagine bringing Ari into this world without her by our side. So it was just really a God thing, I think. But I would say home birth kind of chose us this route more than anything. So anything you want to say, honey?
Yeah, it was really, it was a little maybe scary at first to think about having a home birth. Not that much, because we had a birth center, which is essentially kind of the same thing in a way. But I think it was intriguing, the thought about being able to be in your own space, walk to your own bed after your kiddo is born, everybody come to you. I think I was really intrigued by it. And looking back, it wasn't necessarily an easy birth, which we'll get into, but it was really a beautiful experience. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, anything else you would say, Mary?
I'm curious, would you change a thing? I guess we'll talk about that.
Yeah. No, but it's like I had to hold space for a lot of different feelings.
I feel like there was a lot of acceptance that happened.
A lot of acceptance.
For your birth.
Which we will get to. So, so let's speed up to... So I know this, I work with a lot of mamas and, in different ways in the health space, and it's very common knowledge most women don't give birth on their due date. Like 4% of women do?
Yeah, and unless it's planned. Like it doesn't usually just occur on the due date.
Right. And this is something especially with our daughter. We went to 41-1, and I was so ready to have her, and it was kind of a mind game with her, but our due date just happened to be my dad's 1-year memorial from when he passed. And so I just was like, well, that's kind of crazy that our child, like we have the same due date. And so I really was like, I want our baby on that day. And so in the few weeks leading up to, our due date, I didn't want to do all the things I did to prepare with Ruby, just because I was like, well, I don't want to induce labor early. But then, we were really getting close to the day. And then I was like, well, I don't want to not do things. Like, it was just this weird mind space I was in, I would say. I wouldn't say I was completely anxious, but there was definitely a level of anxiety. Mary would probably disagree. She'll keep me honest. And so the day, I think it was September 6th, the day before his due date, and I went into I was having contractions, and they were very consistent for a while, probably for like a 3 or 4 hour period of time.
Yeah, this is on Monday, right?
On Monday. Yeah. So he was born on a Thursday. So starting Monday, I feel like it was the marathon birth week, guys.
It was a week.
It was like a week-long birth, which I think is just really, I think we have this idea that you just go into labor, but like early labor can last quite a long time, because technically you're in early labor until you're 6 centimeters dilated, right?
Yeah, and for you, I think what you were experiencing was prodromal labor, and prodromal labor, as a person that's had a baby before, can last for a really long time. You can even start to dilate in the face and do all the things that you would expect to be like the day of labor, but happens days before, and it really messes with your brain, because you think that you're in labor all that time, but you weren't really.
Yeah, and you were like, you're an hour away or so, and so that that kind of adds in an element of, I thought we were just gonna, he was gonna come way quicker than our daughter, right? Because she was so fast, so
I think
easy.
we filled the birth pool a little bit on Monday, just slightly.
We completely
well,
did.
no, so what happened?
You gotta share the whole story.
I gotta share the whole story.
Yeah.
We're kind of odd in our household, so I'm like the first to admit, like, I'm a bit weird. And I also like love health stuff, so I'm not afraid to like get in there, learn, be hands-on. What would make other people feel really uncomfortable, I'm like, it's a science project, and sometimes it's my own body that's a science project. And I'm not pregnant every day, so I think we were doing what's the purple line thing? So Monday, can you explain the purple line thing that happened?
Were you looking for the purple line on Monday, or was that Thursday?
No, that was Monday. We started on Sunday, actually, looking at the purple line. I know.
That's where it all got off track.
That's where everything got off track. So
the purple line, and you can Google it if you want to. You will see lots of pictures of butt cracks. If you Google purple line in labor, the purple line is essentially just a discoloration of a mom's butt crack.
Yeah.
Can I say butt crack?
You can, of course.
I say it a lot. And it turns, so for a Caucasian woman, it turns her white or pink skin purplish or bluish, and for women with other skin tones, then it turns it kind of a pale pink. Anyway, so with the purple line, it's as the baby is coming down into the pelvis and applying pressure to all those tissues and kind of restricting the blood flow, it gives like an indication of how far along you are. The higher up the purple line goes, the farther along you are.
Yeah, and so again, guys, I really wanted our son to be born on his due date. So I think we were like, what are any indications that like I am dilating and like things are moving closer to birth, right? And so we started looking at the purple line on Sunday.
I don't think I knew this.
Oh, I don't think things come out.
It's so funny. So you were looking for the purple line here?
Yes. If you would have come into our house, you would have seen me probably with a flashlight and probably up close to her butt cracks. And I think it's a little longer, baby. I think it's a little longer.
My goodness.
Hey, you know what?
Get a Sharpie out.
We're not the first people to do that, by the way. So, but maybe not everyone wants to admit it.
That is too funny.
I know.
I don't think you told me that. That was not in the updates that I was receiving.
So then what did we do? So that was like, well, maybe like, there was some purple line. And so I think we're like, maybe we're like 2 centimeters dilated. I don't know. We were self-diagnosing, guys. This is why it's always important to be in contact with your healthcare provider, always.
Do not take this into your own hands.
Yeah. Which Mary, that's one of the beauties of working with a midwife, I feel, is like you get this really beautiful relationship. You can text, you can have like quicker, easier access, just even to soothe your fears. Or if anything comes up, you're like, hey, it's probably normal, but what do you think about this? And so that's one of the reasons I can't more recommend like having a midwife, just because it's the support and the care is just awesome. And so I think that's when we did our first self-check.
Okay.
Caleb became the birth assistant.
Oh man, I felt so official. So I had my own like blue latex gloves, and I'm like, all right, how many men seriously like know how to? I obviously did not know how to, or are willing to even see how dilated. So I felt like kind of like a badass like prego hubby in that moment.
Yeah, so he kind of like attempted to like check me and see if I was like dilated at all. Which
the first time actually,
you did it
I
right.
did it correctly. I actually got the fingers up in there, and like I felt like it felt like an upper lip. Like, oh wow, okay, there's
a rim.
There's a rim.
Yeah.
And so then I
Different
felt
tissue.
something. I felt something hard with the tip of my finger, and then all of a sudden Kelly jumped because Ari jumped, and then later when we were updating Mary, Mary's like, yeah, you felt your son's head. You felt his skull.
There's not many hard things inside the vagina.
And I never would have connected those dots.
Nothing to really run into until you get to the baby's head.
Until you get the baby's head.
So we communicate this to you, right? We texted you and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to come into town and check you.
Yeah.
No,
Yes, that was Monday.
Because you were having some contractions.
Yes, babe, because she came and I was...
She was 8.
No, that was later.
Was it 8?
No.
I did check
Hold
you
on.
because I confirmed that you were right.
Oh.
2 to 3 centimeters.
Okay, so boom. All right, so
Yeah, you were very confident.
I'm feeling very good after this.
You were very
So
confident.
yeah, Mary
do this
comes,
again.
she checks me. This must have been Sunday.
This
It
was
must have been
actually
Sunday.
this was Sunday. Yeah.
You come, you check me. I'm
Yeah.
3 centimeters dilated. Great. We're like on track. I'm like, we're moving closer. And I'm like, we're 2 days away from the due date. Let's start speeding things up. So the next day, I have these
Monday.
like weird contraction-y thingies. You used a fancy word.
Prodromal labor.
Yeah, that is hard to say. And then I know it was like every 2 minutes I was having very consistent contractions and they were lasting about a minute. And so we're like, hey, we think you should come in and I'm going to have Caleb do a check again and we'll just see.
And we were all confident because of his proven capability.
That's right. Yes, I did it once. That means I'm sure to get a good result the next time, right? And I hear I'm all confident. Okay, I got this. Like it's in the bag. I know what I'm doing.
Totally.
So so we go to check you
one,
again.
do one, teach one. That's
right.
the thing. He was ready.
He was so ready.
So
Ready to open a midwifery school.
I go to check you again, and this time I felt like more pressure in there, but I was not in the cervix like I thought I was.
No.
But I'm like, babe, I can get like 2, 3, I can get like 4 fingers in here, and this is a lot, right?
Guys, don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home.
Kelly took a picture.
Of me, we'll put this photo in the show notes, won't we?
Yes.
So there's a photo of me like holding up like 4 fingers to Mary, like, all right, Mary, this is what I could feel.
He looks so confident
So
and
confident.
So
official.
confident.
And
So
Mary-
official.
And Mary's like, oh my gosh, if that's true, I'm like 8 centimeters dilated.
Yeah, you can't fit a whole hand in a cervix.
Yeah.
I wasn't
it's
even in the
like-
cervix. I was just in the vagina.
She's like, oh no. So you come, your birth assistant, who is also like a doula, Karen comes, and
Like an hour and a half away, right? It's a day
yeah,
drive.
you guys come and labor stalls.
Well, not just that. We're setting up the birth pool.
Yeah.
We are getting
Excited,
everything ready.
for
We're
baby.
so excited.
And and here's all right. This
And
is
you were pretty chipper. Oh, and you called your birth photographer too. She was here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you were pretty chipper, and the contractions were coming, but they were still easy.
yes.
Yes. However, with my daughter, I was still laughing.
She was.
In like that kind of those early
those
stages.
transitions,
And
yeah.
so I was only in this like really intensity for a very short time with our daughter. So I was like, we got this. We are like, we're on our way. And so you come and you check me. And I'm what, like 3 centimeters?
You were still about the same as the time before.
I must have turned beet red with embarrassment. I'm like, oh my gosh.
He was ready to feel validated.
I just had our midwife and our birth assistant come all the way up from the valley. We just filled the birth pool.
I was horrified. Oh, and Caleb had texted
oh my
80
gosh.
people
This is the worst part.
that I was in labor.
Yes, I texted all these people like, all right, guys, I think things are ramping up.
Family, friends, asking to pray.
Which for all of you, partners out there, husbands, like, don't start updating a bunch of people until she's actually truly...
Until you see the head.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then tell everybody the baby's on the way.
Because for the next, 3 or 4 days, I had to basically clean up my mess. Like, well, things slowed down.
Yeah, because our baby wasn't born... That was Monday.
Yes.
Baby wasn't even born till, Thursday
evening.
Yeah.
Evening.
So, that was mortifying,
Maybe back
to
up
be honest.
the first lesson is maybe don't try and check your wife's cervix.
Seeing how dilated she is.
I mean, as long as your wife doesn't mind, it
That's
doesn't
right.
really hurt anything.
Yes.
Except maybe some false information.
That's right.
A little bit of fake news.
We did have some friends. I think you talked to some of your dude friends, and they were like, dude, I wish I could have done that with my wife. You're getting all up in there. They seemed really interested.
This is not classified as foreplay.
No. Oh my goodness. So that was one of the first comedic reliefs, right?
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
That was really funny.
And really embarrassing, but it was really funny.
Yeah.
You took it well.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then Tuesday comes, our due date comes, and I was just had to do some major soul heart work, prayer. I was so discouraged because, again, I really wanted that baby. I wanted Ari to come out on the 7th. I felt like that was our day. And the 7th came and went, and I didn't have a baby. And so I just really had to surrender. I mean, that's really what you have to do is surrender. For me, I believe in God, and I just had to put it back in his hands and just trust that baby was going to come when baby needed to come, which is so easy to say, but then when you're so ready to, we were so uncomfortable, you're so ready to be done, right? Sleeping's horrible. And emotionally, you just want that child. And for me, it was even more than that. And so I spent most of Tuesday just resting and just processing and journaling and praying.
Because your contractions had gone away.
They just disappeared.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's prodromal labor.
Yeah.
Wow.
And usually, if we want to get a little bit technical about it, usually it's a baby position problem, and the uterus is really smart, and the uterus is trying to fix baby's position. And the way it does that is by contracting and squeezing and helping the baby turn.
Yeah.
So once that's fixed, if labor is not actually ready to happen, it will go away.
It's just amazing what our bodies do, how they're designed. And I think that's something that's so cool through this whole birth process, and even bringing birth back home, is it's not a medical event. It can turn into one.
Absolutely.
But that this is so natural. We're made for this, and our bodies know what to do. Our babies, are part of that and have this innate wisdom as well. And so, I just think that's a really cool aspect of it, even though it was really frustrating.
Very frustrating, yes.
So Wednesday morning, right? So due date's come and gone. We're on Wednesday, and that morning going about morning is normal, no contractions.
I think you were on a walk when you texted me that you were feeling some leaking.
Yes.
We were doing stairs.
Not
Stairs
yet.
Walking.
Okay.
But I think I
Walking
was
with
maybe walking, but I had soaked through 3 panties, I think, by noon. And I was it might be vaginal fluid, but it also might just be leaking. So I reached out to you, and then you said to just keep up the walking. So of course I'm I'm gonna go do stairs because we're gonna get this baby out. So we're doing stairs to try to see if there's any contractions. 2 hours later, still some contractions. It started picking up.
You were describing some, but they weren't strong or regular yet.
Yeah.
And you said that Kelly is probably one of the worst clients you've ever encountered for counting her contractions.
Oh, yeah. Both of you are. You're both terrible.
Yeah.
Because you're very I don't know. every once in a while. I don't know.
Yeah. So even with the contraction app, I'm like, well, is this okay?
We forgot to push the button.
Well, and Kelly has a really high pain tolerance too, and so I think sometimes you even second guess, is this actually a contraction or not?
And especially after Monday, I was like, I am
You
not.
second-guessed
I was
everything.
second guessing
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And so, yeah. So then you came in to town that evening.
It was evening, yeah.
And you checked me. So Wednesday night.
Confirmed that it was fluid leaking.
Yeah, but
Yes.
only the first.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about that now?
Sure. I mean, at least for Wednesday night.
Yeah. So the amniotic sac is comprised of a couple different layers, the amnion and the chorion. And when one layer breaks, usually the outer layer, sometimes it's more of a subtle leak or they call it a high leak. And you don't leak a lot, but it's noticeable for most people. And it is considered officially ruptured membranes. But then there's what's called the forebag, is the inner layer is still intact. So baby is still kind of sitting on that cushion.
Yep.
Which doesn't necessarily help your labor progress very well.
No. So, yes. So you went ahead and...
Yes, I attempted to break your bag the rest of the way.
Which you said was actually a really thick sack, right?
Yeah.
Which is a sign of good nutrition.
Good nutrition, yeah.
I'm going to take a win for that
Yeah.
one.
Pat yourself on the back.
Nutrition matters,
Yeah.
guys.
Good nutrition, good supplements. Yep. Taking good care of yourself in pregnancy, we notice it.
Yeah. Which is fascinating. We'll talk about that too with like the placenta in a little bit. And so, yeah, so we did that, hoping and expecting like labor would kickstart. Because once your
water breaks, you're kind of on a timeline.
Yes.
Whether you're in the hospital or the birth center or planning a home birth, we can't just have your water leaking for days and weeks and forever, right? So we have to expect that baby is on their way, and if they're not, we try to encourage it along. For most people, it happens because the water bag is no longer there, kind of providing that cushion and protecting the cervix from the hard little head, and also the hormones that are in the amniotic fluid get your labor going really well. So usually that does happen as long as baby's in a good position.
Yeah. So we were hoping that was the case.
Yeah.
And
Your contractions were, if I remember right, that evening still pretty spaced and not very strong. So we didn't want, Karen and I, my assistant, we didn't want to leave, but we needed to give you space to rest.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was doing stairs. I was walking in there. I
Yeah.
was even doing kukuwa, guys. I love African dance, and
yeah.
kukuwa's the best. And I'm like trying to get things started, nothing. And by midnight, I came in and I was like, I think I need to sleep.
Needed to
Like,
sleep,
I'm going to
yeah.
wear myself out.
So we tucked you into bed.
Yeah.
And
in the most awkward position.
Yeah.
It was very painful.
Yep. So that was fun.
Yeah. What
And
was
then-
this position? It was almost like I was on my side.
Yep.
But then you basically rolled me on my belly with
with pillows.
with
supporting
pillows,
your
and the
belly.
top
Yep.
leg was as high as I could get it hiked up.
Yeah. So it's called exaggerated Sims, and it's something that people can do at home or at the birth center or at the hospital. And what we're trying to do is give baby lots of room and also really encourage baby to not be in the posterior position. So we want baby's a heavy part of baby, the back of the head and the back, to be towards your front, towards your belly button. And because of gravity and
That makes for an easier.
so that's why we do hands and knees, that's why we do spinning baby stuff. But you can't really like sleep in hands and knees position. So this is our version of this is how you rest while trying to encourage the baby to be in a good position.
Yeah.
Exaggerated Sims.
And so everyone just rested then, and I definitely had some like strong contractions through the night it was just not a fun position to be in. But then, by 5 a.m. I'm like, labor is not starting. I think, did I come out 5, 6?
You came out,
7?
I was on the couch.
You were.
I was awake.
Yeah.
I don't know why I was awake, but I was awake.
I was glad you were awake though.
And I think you were a little bit needing reassurance.
Yeah.
Because I remember you being a little weepy.
Yeah, probably.
And you wanted to listen to baby.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to
that's
listen to
right.
baby. That was the other thing I think too that we haven't talked about is I think as the closer I got to Ari's birth, the like more it brought up feelings from having like miscarried in our second pregnancy, and like I was more aware of the baby we
That's
didn't
right.
have.
That's right.
And I think too I just was kind of I wanted to make sure baby was okay the whole time. And it felt like we really had to contend for him in general. It was just like a harder birth, took longer. And so I just needed a lot of reassurance. I think the whole time that he was strong, he was doing good. Because I didn't want to lose him. And I think after losing our son in that second pregnancy, I needed that extra emotional support.
Yes.
My whole pregnancy really, but like especially through labor.
Yeah.
So I forgot we listened to baby. And the whole time, because this was like kind of a hard birth, right? You would say this is probably one of the weirdest.
A little bit abnormal.
Yeah.
Yeah. not your typical textbook.
Especially when you're expecting an easy birth, right?
Yeah. I mean, with your history, I was kind of expecting that it would just be a normal, like, okay, show up, we'll have a baby, tuck you into bed.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
And I do like a lot of the things to prep, eat well,
You
like
did
all
all
of
the
these
things.
things,
All the things.
right?
Uh-huh.
So
Which is probably a pause right there. Even if you do all the things,
Yes.
you still need to let go of those expectations. And
Yes.
ultimately, it is a natural process, but a process you're out of control with.
Well, and there's so much other than the physical that goes into birthing a baby,
Yes.
and emotional stuff
Yes.
is big.
It seems like
Expectations
the
and
head
all
and
that.
heart piece is just as big, as some of the natural mechanics of the body. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
And I've heard, remember with Ruby, we were learning about, wow, just your comfort level of who's in that room with you as a provider and a team, and who's even onlooking or participating. So that was a big deal for us, was, what was the relationship like with our birth photographer, who's amazing, by the way, and we'll give her.
Well, yeah, I think we should pause.
Let's pause.
Sorry, I'm going to just interject. So we had read one of Ina May's books, and she said every person you have in the room adds an extra hour to your labor, which in general, you've seen that in a lot of cases, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so with Ruby, it was only our two midwives and then Caleb and myself. This time it was at home. We had Caleb, myself, Mary, your assistant, Karen, who's amazing. We'll talk about her soon too, because she was just great and very needed. And then Sarah, who from Blueberry Hill Photography, and she just was. I didn't even know she was here most of the time, which is the signs of a really good photographer.
Really good photographer. Yeah.
It didn't add to the stress, and we had like connected beforehand to just really make sure there was that like good connection, because it matters who's there. And our daughter, originally we were going to have her present, but because it was so long and stressful, I just was like, didn't want her present. So your mom came and got her.
Yes.
And then she came back right after Ari was born.
Yeah.
But so she wasn't here. So, okay, so then you can go back to talking about comfort level, the mind.
Yeah, and I'd say, Mary's the one that really can speak to this, but I would say, who you have in the room and on your team makes all the difference, I would say. And I would just say, be ready for things to come up, in this process. I remember with Ruby, Kelly had to process through her adoption, right? With Ruby.
Oh, yeah.
And this time with Ari's birth, we really had to process through the miscarriage, right? The pregnancy loss prior. So it seemed like the physical event of birth, it's almost like a portal, I feel like, into what's going on in your heart level. And I think it feels like it's brought things to the surface that I wasn't expecting as a spouse or partner.
It's an invitation to heal too, I think, which is really good, to make peace with certain things, put closure on certain things, and then move into the now and the present.
I always say childbirth and the process of bringing a baby into the world, you will never be more vulnerable, and you will also never be more strong than in those moments and hours. And you'll never doubt yourself more than those times. Like, they're all the biggest feelings that you can feel right there in that package.
Yes, I really identify with that, especially this birth. I feel like I really experienced those things and was very vulnerable. Yeah.
And you can't be vulnerable around a bunch of people.
No.
It's hard.
Yeah, and so naturally, right, like, you're going to tense up, you're going to close up, right? It can add on to that birth, to the length. Anyways, so I'm a little weepy, right? Thursday morning.
You woke up and you weren't really having many contractions.
Yeah, and I was just like defeated. Because again, we're on a clock too.
Yep.
And so, a lot of our family was like, oh my gosh, you're doing a home birth, like kind of nervous for us. Sure. But at the same time, they're like, don't dare go to the hospital. Because right now, as we're recording this, we're 18 months into the COVID pandemic. And so we also didn't want to go to the hospital, but knowing with this clock ticking that could be a reality. Right. So after I was weepy, we checked baby. He was a champ. He was a champ the whole time. Like,
he was solid.
And then we started a labor party.
Yep.
Can you tell us what a labor party is, Mary?
So typical labor party that you'll run into with a community-based midwife includes castor oil, which some people call the midwife's brew, and you do...
Last resort, guys. It's so disgusting.
There's a lot of different versions of it, but most typically you have like a protein source, peanut butter or almond butter. You have lemon verbena, different herbs, and castor oil and juice. And you blend it all up, and mom drinks it quickly because you can't really sip on it.
It's gross.
You gotta shoot it like a shot, and usually you take it with a chaser.
Yeah.
And then that starts the digestive and hormones and the herbal remedies all kind of encourage your uterus to contract. That's the whole point of the midwife's brew, is to bring on contractions. And we also do breast pump.
Yes.
Different exercises and herbs while you're doing the breast pump. So all of that, like, whole is all part of a recipe to bake this one cake of labor.
Yes.
Right? And it helps to do it all at once. And I don't know why or who came up with it, but every midwife I've ever worked with, we all kind of have the same protocol. You do the brew, you do breast pump, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then walking, going up the stairs.
Cycle circuit thing.
Yep, and then do it again. And you do it for 2 hours, monitoring the baby while you're doing it. And that's always a big thing that I try to remind people. We are naturally inducing, but we are inducing things. Yeah. So we don't want to just flippantly take these at home by ourselves when we don't have someone there monitoring baby. Because sometimes babies don't like labor, sometimes they don't tolerate it, sometimes they don't like the herbs. So we are monitoring you, even though you're not having contractions, like you're in labor, we're monitoring you as much as if you were in labor having contractions.
Yeah, and I think that's true with a home birth. Some people wonder about the safety of it, but I mean, essentially, you bring the whole birth center to us. I mean, we had all your tools, right? We had oxygen, we had Pitocin, right?
Baby monitoring,
Baby monitoring. Yep. I mean, the whole deal. And so you're closely monitoring me and keeping tabs on both me and baby. So it's, if at any point,
right,
my body or baby's communicating we needed more support, like,
right,
we would have been there, right? We had a whole plan.
Yep. And that plan, I think, so we did this labor party, but it really... did it start? It didn't really...
It kind of gave some contractions, but it wasn't what we were expecting to see.
Yes.
Yeah. So after that...
Then we had the conversation, like, okay, what is going on that we can't see? Like, what does Ari need for healthy mommy, and healthy baby, essentially, which is obviously the end result, the end goal. Yeah. And it's like, what kind of birth does he need? Here we want a home birth, but does he need to be born in a hospital? Sure. And that was a conversation we had, like, okay, let's start talking about what our plans are for a transfer.
Because he was not engaging.
If needed.
Yeah, he seemed like he was not coming down into the pelvis very well, like he should have been. But then again, you weren't having super strong contractions, which the contraction is what puts the baby down there. So we had that conversation that nobody really wants to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
it's important.
But it's important to have. And we had a game plan. We knew that the 24-hour mark was coming up if labor
we were only
wasn't
halfway
established.
through it at that point.
Right. And we talked about what else can we do? What other tools do we have in the toolbox? Yep. We talked about your chiropractor.
Yes.
Caleb reached out to the chiropractor.
Yes.
She was phenomenal. She came like
Dr.
2 hours
Chelsea
later.
Oh my gosh, she's incredible. And she herself was, I don't know, she was in her late 3rd trimester. Mm-hmm. And so she herself came pregnant. And, on a moment's notice, she basically squeezed us in before picking up the kids from school. Came and gave us an adjustment, or an adjustment at our home. And it was amazing to see our team rally in that moment.
Yeah. I think, if anything, even in our postpartum journey, which this is a conversation for another day, but our team has been so important. And that's been, we've had to have a lot of support.
Yeah.
I know Mary's looking at me. It's so great doing this live because I'm like, I know where you're going. That's a conversation for another day.
Are we going to have another podcast for postpartum?
Actually.
Yes.
Oh, we should.
You can come back for that one.
Yes.
I would love to.
That'd be awesome. Part 2.
And so... so Dr. Chelsea came, and before she came, though, you're like, I'm going to check you and see what's going on.
So if I remember right, this was like 1:30 or 2, and she was going to be there any minute.
Yes.
And I hadn't checked your cervix in a long time because we try to stay out of the vagina and not risk infection, especially if your water's broken. So I checked you, and you were 6 centimeters.
Woo!
I was so excited. Because, for having really puny contractions, 6 centimeters, that's a uterus that's ready to go.
That was a win.
Right. And I could feel a bag of water, which
guys,
I know was so discouraging because you were probably thinking, you broke my water last night. But there was still a bag of water there.
Ari wasn't engaging, right? And so we were curious.
In my brain, I sent out all the praises, and I was like, this is something I can do. I can fix this.
So let's pause there for a second so people understand. So basically, when you went to help break the sack the night before, you didn't get the entire sack. Is that what happened?
Yes. Yep.
And so basically he had
and you were only a little bit dilated, so 2 to 3 centimeters dilated. You can't feel much, so you're kind of just trying to...
It was a thick sack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trying to get whatever might be there. But at 6 centimeters, you can really feel a lot. And I could feel there's definitely a sac there.
It was like a water balloon, holding him
up. Mm-hmm.
So that was, what was so funny is before you went to check me, I'm like, do we need to put the Chuck's pad down and everything?
I was like, no, because I broke your water last night.
And then she went in.
Even though it makes me seem like an incompetent midwife to have to repeatedly tell you, apparently you grew a 3rd bag of water. Let me just take care of that for you. Hey, it happens.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not too proud to say that I didn't do a very good vaginal exam on you the night before, apparently.
But that's life.
That was a turning point, though.
It was a turning point,
that was the turning point, we were just jumping up and down. Well, maybe not you, but I was jumping down just so excited that, wow, we now know what's going on. We felt hey,
we had answers.
We had answers to why is Ari not coming down. And our concerns are, is the cord wrapped around his neck? We have no idea. And to hear that, he's got a cushion he can't get through.
Yeah.
That made a world of difference.
So you used your fancy...
So it's called an amni hook, and it looks like a little stick or a crochet hook.
Yeah.
And it has just a tiny little hook on the end of it. It's not sharp. It shouldn't be painful. No. Mom or baby shouldn't feel any discomfort other than fingers in your vagina.
Yes.
That's uncomfortable. Yeah. And we broke your water, and there it was.
Huge gush.
Big gush of fluid.
Which, to be honest, you see it in the movies. And we still don't know when Ruby's water broke. It probably was when I was in the tub with her.
Yeah.
So I just have no idea. So I was like, I kind of want that gush.
Yeah, you felt the gush.
It was a gush, guys. It was like, there's a pool of water in my bed.
Yeah.
So, but that's the other great thing. We're doing some of these like vaginal checks and exams right in my bed, like from the comfort of your home. It just was so nice to be able to walk around, like go use our bathroom.
Use your own bathroom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you guys come in the bedroom.
We had a bunch of snacks all for everybody in the kitchen, everything all teed up.
Yeah, it was really lovely. And so that happened. And then within 5-10 minutes, Dr. Chelsea came and she gave me an adjustment, which was amazing. And then, I mean, that really kicks. I went into active labor.
Oh yeah, your contractions were good and strong.
Boom.
And you were like not having fun anymore.
No, there was no more fun.
No more fun.
No more fun. So I don't know where Caleb is. This is where like, at this point,
should we put a pause and share about the garden hose in the tub?
Guys. Okay, so a home birth, it is so important, everyone's different. I think every midwife's different what they supply. If you need to do the tub or if they bring the tub, you brought the tub to us. And so starting at 36 weeks, we had the oxygen here, we had the tube here, the tub here, did we have your bag too? So we were ready to go pretty much, so.
The tub wasn't inflated, but it was ready to inflate.
It was here, so we had all the supplies ready. Now there's some supplies that we have to provide.
Yeah.
And so one of those is a brand new guys, clean garden hose.
And there's a reason that the list is intentionally very short of what the male, the spouse or partner's responsibilities are, you know?
Well, and so, the dudes don't always know how to support their partner, right? And
We're
so
probably more often than not somewhat clueless. Maybe Mary can speak to that.
I would say clueless is a good descriptive word. I intentionally don't give out many jobs for dads unless they really want lots of jobs.
Yes.
But I'm very specific. Like, your job is get a hose and have the attachment that fits your sink.
Yes.
Because I'm not a plumber, and I am not going to be a plumber. And your sink is different from everybody else's sink.
And I will tell you that for me took probably a good 2 weeks, to find.
Which is why dads don't get a lot of jobs.
I was trying to find adapters to my kitchen sink, and I couldn't find that, so I went to Lowe's twice. I went to a local plumbing store. Finally, I'm at the plumbing store, and the guy's like, hey, you know what you need? You need to hook up to your shower. Then you can get higher volume. I'm like, yes, you have it. They gave me the wrong piece, so I went to Lowe's and finally got a different piece.
Okay, but he got a hose.
I got a hose.
A brand new, clean.
Brand new hose.
I saw it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I laid eyes on it during a prenatal visit.
Beautiful.
Mary, like, Caleb's done it.
He
Proud of
finished
him.
his task.
This is week maybe 37 or something, right? So a few weeks before the birth.
Pat on the back.
And then
I don't know, a couple weeks later, like 39 weeks or so.
Yeah, you come into the bathroom and there's our old dirty garden hose with leaves in the tub, and it's hooked up to the shower. And what'd you say?
Come in, he's in the office, and I come out of the bathroom like, Bub, why is the hose from our like outside garden in the tub? He's like, well, I was just getting it ready and testing it for your birth. I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
I'm not using that.
Sometimes he just likes to get a rise out of me.
Yes,
I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And I'm just staring at him.
And I said, well, you know what? Our other hose was too short. And I realized we've got this really long hose. We already own it. It's in the backyard. Like, I took it back. I returned the new one. And I've got our garden hose set up. It's going to be great.
Guys, there's dirt and leaves and grass, like cuttings in my tub. Like,
and
this is a dirty hose.
Like, I'm really more concerned about what you can't see.
What's inside.
Like the pathogens and germs.
From a 2-year-old garden hose. So I was immediately sent back to Lowe's to go rebuy a longer garden hose. I said, yes, babe, I'm on it. All right, I'll be back, and I promise I'll clean up the tub when I get home. So that's kind of a little context for, so filling the tub was more of a bigger process.
A little bit.
And it was.
So,
ultimately, it worked out just fine.
It worked out
and
just
we
fine.
had a clean garden hose.
We had a perfectly clean garden hose.
Right.
So, but there's a bigger story behind, like, filling the tub wasn't just like, go turn on some water. It was like, it was a thing.
I would say when people are preparing for a home birth for the first time, the logistics of water birth with a big birth pool is probably the most complicated thing.
Okay.
because
which doesn't sound that complicated. It's filling a pool.
But you have hot water heaters that go out.
Yes.
Or it's a huge tub compared to a normal bathtub.
Okay.
So if your hot water heater is used to filling up one little bathtub, this is probably 3 times the amount of water. We run out of hot water. We don't have the right hose. We don't have the right attachment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So check your fittings.
All
you dudes, check your fittings beforehand.
Listen to your midwife. Don't try to go the cheap route.
Don't try and save $15 and use your backyard hose for the home birth.
And you
the
won't have a happy
won't let
wife.
you get in that tub. If you have leaves and who knows what else floating around in your pool.
Spiders.
So this is going back to the day of the birth, Thursday.
Okay, so
you basically said we can start filling the tub.
We did. We started filling the tub because their contractions were definitely happening.
Boom.
We were having a baby soon.
We were having a baby. But he disappeared. So obviously his job was supposed to like fill the tub, but like emotionally, like you know, and I didn't have a doula with Ruby, even though I think they're so beneficial, and like I really advocate for having a doula. But Karen, your birth assistant, is also a doula.
She is also a doula, yes.
And so Caleb just disappeared. Like, he was not... I mean, you were very supportive, but you were like, you were texting people because
all those
of this
people I texted.
fiasco.
We're finally doing it for real this time.
That's right. And
She's actually in labor.
Yeah, so that texting, in hindsight, that texting really made me not very present. I was more present with our network of friends and family than I was with you.
Yeah, and you were like filling the tub. So, thank God Karen was here.
Yes.
Because she was like the emotional support I needed.
And I remember, I don't know if I talked to you about it or I just like initiated it, but I was getting your chart like up to date, and I was preparing the space to have a baby. So I was busying myself with midwifey stuff.
Yes.
And noticed that Caleb was just a little bit distracted, and you were really doing the hard work now.
Yeah.
So I grabbed Karen. I think she was in the kitchen at that time. And I said, go in there and like be present with Kelly. And she did.
So
and
thankful.
you guys had a few minutes together.
We did.
20, 30 minutes where you were just laboring.
And all I remember was she was just like an angel. She was just encouraging, comforting, soothing.
Yeah.
And just knew... I mean, because she's a doula, knew what to do to, like, comfort me. I wasn't asking for anything, really. She was, like, offering me water and, you know, rubbing my back or saying encouraging words. And so I really needed that support.
Yes.
Right. Connection to someone else outside of your brain.
Yeah. And again, because it was a little bit more emotional of a journey for me this time than it was with our daughter. And so I was just really thankful. So... in the meantime, I'm laboring.
Yes.
And
in your bedroom.
In the bedroom.
Can I just share what I'm doing?
Yes, this is where I wanted to go.
I'm filling the birth tub with our clean garden hose, but I also thought, you know what? I better put on some pans or pots of water just in case, like we run out of hot water in a hot water heater. So I go over and I get our big pot going. And there must have been some old food debris underneath our electric stove because I'm busying myself and filling up the tub. All of a sudden, I start smoking out of our kitchen. Yeah. And, you know, Mary comes out and says, "Hey, who's burning down the house?" And so I'm like opening up the windows.
I'm like, there's a fire. I'm in like active labor. What is happening?
Meanwhile, you know, hubby's MIA smoking up the house. So
while you were opening the window, you saw a friend.
Oh yeah, the upstairs neighbor
outside.
We live in a duplex or fourplex.
Yeah, and Mary's like, "Caleb, get that tub filled." I'm like, "Hey, you know, guess what? We're having a baby. the next hour or two, we're having a baby."
This is why I needed a doula, because Caleb was like,
Caleb was a social butterfly.
I wasn't even. Yeah,
he wasn't really even freaking out about, like, you know, normally the stereotypical dude in labor is, oh my gosh, you know, prepare the space and get the bag packed and all those things and run around. Oh, he was like, how's it going?
I was kind of the other extreme.
Have a baby.
Maybe I was too comfortable with the process.
Or that might have been your coping mechanism or whatever.
Yeah.
You were like, I need to get out this excited energy.
Yes. And I will say too that the context of who's like, I felt really comfortable like with Mary, you know, and I felt really good with our team too. That I never had any, you know, I had my peace the whole time. I never had any we had moments like, okay, what's up with Ari? Why is he not coming down? And do we have to go to the hospital?
But once I went into active labor.
No, it was just like, all right. It's like, yes, like we're doing this, you know, like here it comes. It was kind of that momentum that we felt.
Mm-hmm. So birth pool is filling up. Mm-hmm. I'm about to get into it because I want that natural coping.
That's a good relief
measurement or pain relieving measure, you know. Mm-hmm. And you're going to check me one more time.
Yes.
I'll check.
Yep. Before you get in the tub, we wanted to make sure that we are making good progress and the tub isn't going to slow things down.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you actually, did you call him a stinker or
no,
a little?
I
think you called.
I feel really bad about that.
It was so funny in the moment.
I'm sorry.
No, but the way Mary says things, it's really, it was comic.
And if you know Mary, like you just,
Oh, so am I allowed to say bad words on your podcast?
Yes,
okay.
we might get an explicit rating, but that's okay, Mary.
During this last vaginal exam, right? I didn't check you again afterwards.
No.
He had moved down, so his head was even lower. Mm-hmm. And your cervix was like 8 to 9 centimeters. Cervix was almost gone. But then I felt his little fingers on the side of his head. And that's when I said out loud, "You little shit." And then I had to tell you, like, while my fingers were inside of you, okay, this is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Because
and what's the big deal with his hand being down?
So his hand being down prevents his head from fully coming down. The head starts as a small part of the head. And that's what we really feel first. And if his hand is there with the small part, the big part of the head, the crowning part of the head, isn't going to fit. And so they call it a compound hand or compound whatever. In his case, it was his hand, which means that his head is coming with the hand. His hand is coming with his head, and we need to try to reduce the hand. That's what it's technically called. So the technique for that, it's very clinical, is you pinch their fingers. And if you can imagine, a midwife is not like a husband. She does cervical exams with 2 fingers in the cervix, and the rest of her fingers are folded back. Usually we're not putting our whole entire hand inside the vagina. Is this getting too technical?
No, this is great. Okay. I'm just reliving. This is where I say our birth was slightly traumatic.
Yes, I'm
is
sorry.
Where the trauma came.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so with my 2 fingers, my pointer finger and my middle finger, I'm pinching his little tiny fingers that I can feel next to his head. And then what the baby does is he'll pull his hand back because, somebody is grabbing them. So they'll pull their hand back and out of the way. But I was probably doing it for a few minutes.
Uh-huh. You had to do it twice.
Yeah. Because he moved his hand.
Oh, he moved his hand.
Yeah, so it was on the left.
So she's like manually dilating me 8 to 9 centimeters because her fingers are there, guys, to hold my cervix open.
It's very uncomfortable.
And Kelly is like gripping the bars of our bed and just yelling.
And I think you yelled. That was the first time you really vocalized your discomfort.
Yes.
And at this point, our daughter actually was still here.
Yeah.
And I was
Grandma, too.
Grandma had just shown up, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I traumatizing my mother-in-law?
Potentially, that's okay.
Yes.
It was a really intense scream because, I'm holding like the bedpost up behind my head. And, I felt in my head, we restarted watching Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, which I love. I loved it as a kid. Yeah. And I still love it. I mean, we live in Alaska, pioneer spirit. I love it. But, oftentimes you didn't have medication, or if something happens
you can't just do surgery.
You can't just do it or get pain medication.
You had no
So this is not happening. I have no pain medication.
No. Mm-hmm.
And so
this is all you.
I thought I had a high tolerance for pain. I thought labor was not the most painful thing I've ever done because I've had an ovarian torsion, which was way worse, and dengue fever. Both of those were way worse until this. This is actually...
Was this worse than your torsion?
Yes.
Wow.
This was worse than my torsion. And so, I am just I think I'm gripping Karen's hand with one hand, and I was squeezing it, and then I was gripping, the bar on our, our bed frame.
Yeah.
And it didn't last long.
So I
pinched his hands on the left, and he moved them, and then I moved my hand over, so I'm, going across the top of his head.
Yeah.
And I can feel it on the right side. So I'm like, oh boy. Okay, here we go. So I did it again on that side, and then it was done.
It was done.
Mm-hmm. he moved both hands out of the way, but and I was teasing you a little bit afterwards. I don't know if you remember this, but I was talking about he had his praise hands.
His little praise hands.
Yes.
He had his praise hands up above his head.
Yes.
So excited.
Yes, which he still does.
Even now.
So many things that baby does in utero, they do out. And that hand, he is handsy.
Those hands up high.
Yeah.
But even when he was coming down the birth canal, which we'll get to in a sec, he had his
elbows were
up, which would made it for a harder,
pushing.
birth.
It was not fun. And so I
Pretty
at
much
that point,
the opposite of a butter birth.
it was the opposite, guys. I thought it was going to be so easy. And at this point, that was such a hard moment. It was very painful. I cried.
Yeah.
And I just got really weepy afterwards.
Yeah.
And like for a good chunk of the rest of the birth, like really struggled emotionally, I think.
Yeah, you internalized a lot. You started blocking people out. Like, I'm not having a conversation. I'm not talking about anything. I just want to get in the tub and have a baby.
Yeah.
And don't touch me.
Don't touch me.
Which is that a pretty common experience that women have?
Yeah, but especially after, that was really hard.
Yeah, that was
Brutal.
And so I was very weepy and and just very.
And can I interject?
Of course.
Something like that has nothing to do with your place of birth. That's a weird baby issue.
Yeah.
So stuff like that happens in the hospital too, where they will see a weird presenting baby, a baby that has their head cocked off to the side or their hand is up or whatever. And they do the same thing, maybe with some pain medicine.
Yes.
But they do the same thing to fix it.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah. So, and it was just Ari, right? Just Ari, kind of. And so I get in the tub and I start, was I in the tub for like an hour before he was born?
I think about an hour. We didn't really have to rewarm it or anything.
Yeah. So from the time I went into active labor to when he was born was really only 2.5 hours. So it's still relatively really quick. I pushed a lot more, or like it was a lot more to get to the pushing stage, I feel, than with Ruby.
Yeah. Because with Ruby, you just got in the tub. And then 10 minutes later, she was out, essentially.
It's like, whoa, we have a baby.
Yeah. It was so expectation-wise, you were really, that was your previous experience, our previous experience that we were really kind of comparing things to, I would say.
I was really struggling as he was like descending, and I wanted it to be faster. And then I was really struggling emotionally. And like.
Do you feel like you were holding back a little bit, not pushing as much as you could have been?
Maybe. I think I just was starting to feel like I can't do this, which I think even at one point I said like, I can't do this,
You did.
and had to be reassured that I could do this. And so, that was new for me to like really struggle on that emotional, like mental front.
And that's the vulnerability of it.
Yes.
Where you think, I can't do this. There's no way I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's too hard.
Too hard.
You're normally so confident about your body and you know so many things, etc. as
and
a
I was
professional.
confident about birthing babies after Ruby, like really confident. And so this, I feel like, just kind of with what happened on the Monday and then how long and then like all of the challenges. I just was like losing that confidence. And so
which is humbling, and I think that's good to talk about that, especially as a professional. Here we have a whole course or supporting, pregnancy, fertility, postpartum, you support women in the space. I think that was a really hard thing to wrestle with, even postpartum. I feel like, wow, like, am I a fraud? Or who am I to show up and support women in this area when I've had this experience?
Right,
or
that wasn't easy.
Yeah, exactly.
But in my opinion, these are the stories that people need to hear.
Yeah.
Where you had expectations that you had to let go of.
Yeah.
Totally.
Where you had to use all your tricks and you had to realize that you need to allow the process to happen, however it's playing out.
Yeah.
And there were so many moments like that, right? When we had to surrender, like, do we need to go to the hospital or do we? There was a lot of those moments. Yeah.
And I'd say that's a good word to think about birth, I would say, is the word surrender. Because like you really are, like, how do you surrender and like just align yourself with the flow of what's happening, almost like what's happening to and through you. It feels like there's a greater power moving through you through birth that either you can get in alignment with or not, is what it feels like as a third party observer. And so, and it felt like in those moments of surrender, that's when things kind of really helped. That's when stuff started to move.
So often, especially in the medical community, we put all of the problems that happen in childbirth, problems, quote unquote, on the woman. Failure to progress, incompetent cervix, like all of those things.
Is that what
those
they call it?
Failure to progress. Like if she starts labor but it fails.
Okay.
Right? So all of those, the terminology
Yes.
is very much directed at
Even
women.
breastfeeding, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the woman's problem.
Right. And we so often don't take into consideration that there's multiple things to consider. Baby's position, which you can't really control. You can do all the spinning babies in the world, but
Yes.
if your baby has his hands up by his head,
Praise hands.
you can't control
Yes.
that.
No.
You can't like send him a memo that says tuck your hands down and
Yes.
you're gonna be born soon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is so much that, and as women, we tend to internalize that and blame ourselves and say this, it was my fault, or I didn't take the right vitamins, or I didn't eat enough organic food, or all
Yeah.
the things.
Yes.
And there's so much outside of our control.
I think that's such a good point.
It's powerful.
Yeah. That was definitely one of the lessons I was learning this time.
And that's a hard lesson to hear, especially when you're supposed to feel like you're so empowered and in your power and you're so strong and doing all the things. But it's really hard.
Really hard.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a hard birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, so where are we? We're in the tub.
In the tub. You are.
I'm in the tub.
You were not invited in the tub.
That's
Caleb.
right.
Caleb was not invited in the tub, though I was holding on to you and squeezing your hand.
Yeah, you were gripping my. So I was basically kneeling next to you. I was on the outside of the tub. We were both leaning up against the edge of it, and you were just like gripping. I had my hands crossed, and we basically were just gripping.
It was really
Hands.
yeah, and I feel like even that as he was descending, because of how his elbows were, it was just like more painful, and it was like a struggle.
Feel all of that. And he is bigger than Ruby.
Yeah, it was like a pound, almost a pound bigger. So yeah, and so then, but one of my favorite moments in the tub was like, I kind of got out of the zone, but kind of like tuned into my surroundings more than just like what was happening. And we had Maverick City Worship on, which we love, or Maverick City music, and you, Mary, Karen, Caleb were all singing and like just giving God like gratitude and thanks. And that was just for me to be able to like have our child born in such a positive atmosphere with hope.
Yeah.
It was so relieving, but it was just like really uplifting for me. And I feel like gave me the oomph I needed to like finish.
Yeah.
And so
It was really powerful.
yeah, and to see him come forth, and again the whole time like his little, I was had this underlying like nerve, like, is our child gonna be okay? Just
Right.
like, and so every step of the way, his like heart rate never dropped. He was just steady Eddie. I'm worrying for no reason.
Well, it's a very common thing. Pregnancy after loss is a whole nother mind game.
Yeah.
Because you do worry, even though you have all the reassurances of, yes, he sounds good, everything is going well. Like,
And
for what it's worth, it did progress, right?
yeah,
And yeah, we still worry.
we still
We
worry.
can't help it.
Yeah, I almost like get teary just thinking about it. 'Cause it was very hard. And so then, did I ask you to like just see where he was at, or did I? At one point, I flipped over, and he was coming.
Yeah.
And so
Did you feel? Did I tell you to feel?
I think you told me to feel probably, and I think.
Because I don't remember checking you.
And
in the tub.
I wanted to push. I think I was like, I want to push. And so I started to push. And then looking back, Sarah talked about our photographer. Like I gave this really like a roar.
Like a lion.
Kind of just went into that place. Really, started pushing.
You did, yeah. It was a shift where there was this. It was primal.
That's the word I was going
Yeah,
for.
it was a
Like,
primal roar that came from something deeper. I've never heard that, and so it was really cool. It's like
That
there's
wasn't Ruby's birth experience.
that wasn't
It was
Ruby's
not
birth.
Ruby's birth
Ruby's birth
experience.
experience was we had Nora Jones going. We had our candles and stuff, and
Yeah.
this was an actual roar, which is kind of, Ari, his name in Hebrew means lion or lion of God, and so and you just have like this big old roar you basically did. And it was a couple of them, And it just was a really powerful, amazing experience to witness, to be witness to that, to see the shifts and the phases that you went through in his transition.
It's really, yeah. It's interesting hearing like the other perspective of others who were in the room, right? Because I have my own, but to hear. And then.
And you had no control over your roar.
No.
It just comes out of you.
Just comes out.
Yeah.
And so, most of the time I'd probably like to keep that in, but in that instance, that was like the thing to do.
That's what you needed.
That's
what he needed.
Yeah. And so then he started coming out, and then you noticed cord, right?
Mm-hmm. He had a cord around his neck, so we moved that up out of the way. It's called reduce the cord. So we just reduced his cord, slipped it up over his head, and then he was born.
Put him out. He had
amazing pictures. She
gosh.
got amazing pictures of as he was coming out.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
we have a slideshow in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes, the slideshow.
Yeah, that she put together was just
so beautiful.
So beautiful. Yeah, and again, hardly knew she was there, which was just like, how did this happen? Like, these are amazing.
Yeah.
And so...
What was the feeling like for you, having contended, having wrestled through the fears, even the whole 9-10 months leading up to his birth, with having lost our previous... What was that? Can you even remember what it felt like to actually have him on your chest?
Relief.
Relief. Just a wave of relief.
Just utter relief.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, just relief. And he was fine. And, like, with Ruby, she needed, like, oxygen and, like, I needed a shot of Pitocin. And so I think I was a little bit more apprehensive about even, like, the post-birth just because I guess the only complications we had with Ruby were post-birth. And they weren't even, like,
yeah,
really
she just
that
needed
serious.
a little support.
Just a little support, and I just needed a little support. And so I was just, like, really relieved.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And then it was so cool. So then
Picked him up.
Picked him up. Yeah, then... Was the placenta...
Got out of the pool.
Placenta was delivered in the pool.
I delivered the pool.
Yeah.
It's placenta.
Right.
That came pretty quickly.
It did.
Yeah.
Because it can take, what, sometimes
yeah,
up
I
to
mean,
20 minutes?
especially we have found this year, we've had some placentas that don't want to come out. There were stubborn placentas.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I'm a little apprehensive, not necessarily with getting the baby out, but it's like I'm a little trigger ready. Is the placenta going to come?
Yeah.
And is it going to be normal? And, like,
interesting.
all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your placenta did just fine.
It came out, and,
Looked great.
so someone's holding the little bowl with the placenta in it, and I'm like, kind of have a towel, kind of a baby, get out of the tub.
Yeah, dry you off.
Dry off, kind of
Shuffle to
the bedroom.
Yes.
He, latched on the way to the bedroom.
That's right.
It was really funny. He was like, oh, just chomped on.
He knew.
He is a voracious eater to this day.
Yeah.
I think we had, a 4-week period where he was gaining almost a pound a week.
Oh, he's just an incredible nurser.
He's and so... Anyways, so the cool thing, home birth, you get to go into your bed. So I get into my bed, and then all of the afterbirth, all the vitals, all of those exams that you do with baby, checking the placenta, get to happen while I'm in bed.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Which is awesome.
And baby never leaves you.
Baby never leaves me. And
So we don't take the baby to any different part of the room. Baby's exam was done on your bed.
And we even at that point, we had my mom bring Ruby back.
Yeah, so Ruby had left while I was in active labor.
So, but they came back when you were doing some of the post checks and whatnot. And so Ruby got her own little gloves. and
Which is really cool. She wanted it. It was like a science project. She actually got into it, which I know some people think is kind of strange, but we just normalized it.
Totally. Most families that have kids and then there's a baby born at home, the older kids will inspect the placenta with me.
Cool.
And because we have to evaluate it, make sure it's all there, make sure it looks normal and healthy, make sure there's 3 vessels in the cord, all the things. So we're doing a check on it all. And that's one of my favorite parts about that postpartum period is going through it with the little kids, because it does totally normalizes the birth process.
Yeah.
And really drives home, mommy had this great big organ that she grew with her baby and was, here it is. Look at the evidence of this.
Yeah. and I still had an opportunity to make a fool of myself.
Oh, that's right. There's another comedic moment.
Very cool. My cord, was that one of the longest cords?
It was a very long cord. Did I measure the cord? I don't remember if I measured it, or there's just a picture of me holding it up and saying how long it is. It was a good long cord.
It was really long. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad it wasn't more wrapped around him.
Sometimes babies will really get tangled up.
Yeah, it was long.
And,
long cord.
And we didn't clamp it until it was all fully. I mean, Ruby actually helped clamp it, didn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she cut the cord, which was super
after
cool.
all the blood was pumped through, all that stuff, the delay.
Delayed cord clamping,
Yeah, so we had it so I'm in bed, if you can picture this, holding baby, having all those lovely baby snuggles, and there's just a chair next to our bed, and we had the placenta in a bowl
sitting on the chair. You were too close to the edge of the bed to put it there.
Exactly.
On the bed.
And then Ari, obviously the cord hadn't been cut yet. So
for some reason, I go to move the chair.
You were doing something. There was a task.
There was some task.
You had a purpose for being over there.
I was looking for something.
Yeah.
And so, not even thinking. Maybe my mind is on my newborn son, but I go and I move the chair, right? I'm moving the chair out of the way, completely forgetting the placenta is attached to it.
The placenta on the floor.
All of a sudden, placenta goes right on the floor, right in the carpet. And thank goodness that cord was as long as it was, and he yanked
yank it off of pull the baby off of the mom.
Oh my God.
So there were so many moments to make a fool of myself. And looking back, I think that's why we laugh at how our birth was beautiful, hard, and also really funny.
Yeah, very funny. There was so many times we laughed throughout it, mainly because of you, Bob.
Yes, yeah. You're welcome.
Yes. So that was really cool that after just being in bed, having all the checks there, doing all his little baby vitals, and Ruby was in the mix at that point, which was just so cool.
Yeah,
and I was just so relieved. And I think it was fun too because everyone who was present was kind of reliving different aspects of it. Sarah shared some of her perspective, and you and Karen. That was really fun. Mm-hmm. And then you stay for a couple hours and make sure we're good.
In the state of Alaska, we have our rules that we work under, and we're required to stay at least 3 hours, and you have to meet some guidelines. So you have to pee, you have to eat, baby has to nurse, and we have to ensure that you're not bleeding too much and your vitals are stable, both of you. And that qualifies you as normal, quote unquote. Yeah. And then we tuck you in bed and go.
And then you come back 24 hours later.
Yep. So all the 24-hour stuff that we would do, the oxygen test and the metabolic screening, all that stuff we do at your home 24 hours later.
It's just amazing.
And I will say that the aftercare follow-up, even beyond the birth, has been incredible. I can't even count how many times Mary's come to our home to check up. That's been one of the coolest things as well, is that the support didn't stop actually at the birth. But
because it's such a vulnerable time still. Yeah. And you're figuring out so much, right? Trying to establish nursing, and you're tired, you're still bleeding, your
baby is doing silly things.
Yep. Yeah. And so it was, I think that's been one of my favorite aspects of, and just the relationship continuing on and just that care. I think it's made all the difference.
It has. Yeah, it has for us.
Yeah. I don't know what I'd do without it. So it was really incredible. Home birth, I can't imagine not doing a home birth again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to have more kids or not, but it was amazing.
It's our first choice. And so what would you say, and there's probably a lot of people right now that I know home birth, for some people it has a stigma. I mean, it's the minority of people that do have home birth.
For sure.
Right? I would say.
In the state of Alaska, statistically, we have the highest concentration of people with having home births and out of hospital births. But nationwide, it's less than 2% of babies are born at home.
Okay.
And in Alaska, it's more like 30 to 40%.
Oh wow, that's incredibly higher.
Yeah,
oh, man. We
have the highest amount of community-based midwives and out-of-hospital birth centers and babies born at home.
So I'm curious, and so through this whole conversation, my hope is that someone really can learn. There's a lot of nuance, right, to what a home birth is like. At least for our story
they all
is
look different. Right?
Every story is different.
Mm-hmm. We have friends who just gave birth in the UK, and their whole midwife system's different because they have private midwives or they have midwives that work within the NIH.
In the NIH,
and so their experience was different than ours. But our home birth, I mean, this is we've just described what it looks like.
Yeah. But I'm curious, like from both of you, like what would you say, maybe Mary, what would you say to a couple who's maybe they were planning to give birth in the hospital, now they're considering switching to a birth center or a home birth, or they're thinking about a home birth the next time around, like what advice would you give them as they're thinking through making that potential decision for them and their family?
I think if I were to consolidate everything into one or two sentences, I would say you can always start at home and go to the hospital if it's not right for you. But once you're in the hospital and in that mentality and the system of the hospital setting, you're kind of on that freight train and you can't really get off of it. Community-based midwife or birth center practice, we are in the business of having good outcomes, moms and babies that are happy. Like, we definitely don't want to keep you home if you're not meant to be home.
Yeah.
So it's our goal to give you the birth that you want, an empowered experience in a safe way, which is always, hospital is always in the back of my mind, whether it's what the family wants or not. Sometimes we have to use it, and
we had a conversation about it. We were very...
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But in the hospital setting, it's like a foreign country, it's for them, they think they're not very familiar with everything.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of open your mind to the possibilities and feel empowered because you're the one doing the work. Nobody's doing it for you. We have our tools and tricks to help you, but you have to physically do the work. And if I'm always happy to consult with anybody. Most midwives are free consultations in whatever area of the globe you live in to see what it would look like in your area. It's different everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because working with midwife was really different with Ruby and having a birth center birth than this one even, right?
Yeah.
And so,
What would you say thank you, Mary, what would you say to a couple that's maybe considering?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Mary said of having a consult, making sure the fact that I paused when we knew okay, we're no longer going to be with this one provider and Mary's now available for us. I really wanted to make sure that it was a good fit. And so I think that is really important, regardless of where you give birth, is that you feel like you're heard, you feel like you're seen, and someone that can also be honest with you as well. And so, because birth, it can play mind games, and there were so many times where Mary had to be just honest with me too, of you've got this, or just get out of your head, and so just having that as a coach too. Is really important. And so I think making sure you're comfortable with your provider. And then I think just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be empowering either.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because I think this birth was so hard. And
you were thrown a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Right? You had to really change in your mind how it was going to go every step of the way.
Every step of the
way.
way.
You were thrown roadblocks.
Yeah.
And then we had to navigate around the roadblock.
Yeah. And you had to pull out all your tricks.
All the tricks.
All the tricks.
And I also want to say it's never too late until your baby's coming out of you.
That's a good point.
To switch. If you are not happy, if it doesn't feel right, if your provider is saying things that you don't feel comfortable with, reach out and talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
Where could someone go to find maybe find the right midwife or out of hospital birth team that would be right for them?
In the state of Alaska, there's Midwives Association of Alaska. There's a website of all the licensed midwives. You could Google search.
Yeah.
You can reach out and ask any of the local midwives here. And usually when I talk to somebody, I usually will say, by the way, if you want to, you can talk to 4 or 5 other people and give them their name and their number. And I encourage people to find the right midwife.
Yeah.
Because for me, as a midwife, I want my clients to be right for me.
Totally.
And usually that means that they are comfortable and we're a good fit. It's not just, gobbling up everybody that comes to me. So frequently I'll have people reach out and have consultations with multiple people. Nationwide, there's a registration, national registration called NARM that you can look for and search different midwives in your area. But
that's great. We'll put those in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll have all those. And we've definitely shared different things, resources throughout this conversation too. We'll put in the show notes. And so, I think being comfortable is so important. And I think too, making sure you and your partner are on the same page.
Yes.
And so like I said with Ruby, Caleb was really hesitant to have a home birth, especially because we lived so far from a hospital. And so we had a compromise there. We were on the same page. And then on this time, we had to make sure we were on the same page. And I think that's really important because you need, as the birthing person, you need all of the support you can get. And even though we joke, Caleb wasn't always present throughout the thing. I can't think of a better life partner that
sure.
He's been my rock through all of this and so supportive and so encouraging. And so you're it's going to be okay, or I have peace, or, and so just making sure him and I are on the same page.
And we both have to clearly express our needs for that to work too.
Yes.
So as a partner or a spouse,
Yeah.
Learning how to really listen and hear and give space to support whatever's needed, and then learn how to express your own needs. I feel is really important.
And I'll say this too, because it's reminded me of something. Don't be afraid to speak up as the dad, as the spouse, because sometimes we are all feeling the same thing and nobody's talking about it, and dad's the one to speak up about it. Recently, just a few weeks ago, I had a mom, and she lives in Willow, which is about an hour away from me, so 2 hours away from you guys.
Wow.
So she's farther north. And this was her last baby. She wanted a home birth, and so we talked about it, and I'm like, okay, these are the things that are on my mind. You're far away from me, you're far away from the hospital. We could have a crazy blizzard in October, we never know. So we got that out, and she still wanted to do the home birth, and I'm like, okay, sounds good. And then at 37 weeks pregnant, she changed her mind, and it wasn't necessarily because of anything that was going on with her. Her husband spoke up one night and said, I just feel like maybe we should plan on the birth center, which is closer to, it's in town.
Yeah.
And so he said that to her, and she said, I kind of feel the same way too, but I didn't want to say anything. And then they told me about it, and I'm like, oh, well, whew.
Yay.
Good.
Good. See you at the birth center.
Yes.
So clearly communicating.
Yeah. And don't ever feel like your opinion or your feelings aren't valid, because sometimes mom is just trying her best to keep her eye on the prize.
Yes.
And she might have those feelings, but she's not expressing them.
Or feels silly for feeling them.
Sure.
And so, I definitely know this pregnancy, I don't remember communicating with our midwife, with Ruby, very often, throughout the pregnancy. But I texted you a lot, because I had a little bit more apprehension after our, losing our baby in the second time. And so it was just nice to, nothing silly. And just asking, and if you feel something's off or you have concerns, it's so okay to say something and just be like, this might not be anything, or this might be something, but this is what I'm encountering, or this is how I feel. And I had all the feels this birth, right? You saw me laughing at points and dancing, and I think I was salsa dancing at one point, and then, and then I'm screaming and, crying and losing my, confidence and everything. So it was the whole spectrum of things. And so just it's okay to share, I guess is what I'm saying. And not to feel silly.
Right.
Because mama intuition is so powerful. So is dad's.
Yes, trust it.
As Mary was saying. But yeah.
Trust it.
So
it was beautiful.
It was really beautiful. And in the end, it was really empowering. And it is the hardest thing I have ever done now, I can say. Physically and just emotionally, it just took me to new places. And I had to rise above the circumstances and
The fear, the
the
doubts.
fear and but man, having him here, oh my goodness.
He's been asleep in my chest this whole time. It's probably that snoring sound in the back of the microphone.
That is the baby.
He's on my chest, sleeping away. So it's amazing, Mary. We're so honored and grateful.
Oh my gosh!
We've not only gained our beautiful son, we gained a close friend too, and so it was meant to be.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, really, really beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Yes,
for the second time.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
Actually, your other episode I'm keeping it just in our course. So if you want Miss Mary's conversation, you have to join our course, and we even do a deeper dive into all the things home birth and midwifery, which is really good. So you'll want it there.
And I really do think that maybe when you're a little farther postpartum, you should explore your postpartum journey.
Oh yeah, that's been a whole nother story.
Especially the first week?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. The first 10 days were awful.
Yeah.
And just really challenging. And so...
Not that anything physically was wrong with you.
Or baby. But like circumstantially, that's a whole nother thing.
A lot of doubt.
Yes.
A lot of doubt.
You had to address a lot of doubt.
A lot of doubt. And so...
So stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation.
Lessons from the 4th trimester.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in with us. And I want to hear from you guys too. What are any other questions you have around home birth in general? And if you have a story you want to share too, we want to hear from you.
So we'll put our email in the show notes, right?
Yeah. And so you can email us at hello@nourishedmotherhood.com. So thank you guys. And that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Hey guys, wow, thank you so much for joining us today. I had so much fun recording this conversation with Caleb and Mary, and I hope you really enjoyed hearing Ari's birth story. Our birth photographer, Sarah, beautifully captured her birth. If you want to get a better understanding of what a home birth looks like and see a slideshow of Ari's birth, you can find it in the show notes linked up in the description for this episode. This story is close to my heart, and I'll be honest, at first, I wasn't sure I wanted to share it with the world. But the more I thought about the beauty, the struggle, and how empowered I felt through it all, the more I knew I needed this to get out to the world. For those of you who don't know, I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner with a passion to help women get healthy and nourish their body and babies so they can grow a healthy family. If you want to get pregnant or have been trying for a while, I want you to know that there's things you can do before you get that positive pregnancy test that'll impact the health of your kids and even future grandkids. And that's why I created our Nourished to Flourish course. It's an online program that you can go through on your own time to learn how you can boost your fertility, nourish your body and baby, and be set up for a successful pregnancy and postpartum recovery. It's loaded with over 30 videos and lots of helpful guides designed to help you feel empowered, confident, and supported no matter what stage of motherhood you're at, because none of us are meant to go it alone. Visit www.nourishedmotherhood.com/nourished-to-flourish or check out the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, friends, thanks for joining us today and have an amazing day. I hope you love this episode of the Nourished Motherhood podcast. If you want to stay in touch and up to date with all the happenings over at the Nourished Motherhood Collective, make sure you're a part of our email community. Head on over to our website at nourishedmotherhood.com or click the link in our show notes to get on the list.